You're almost live on YouTube.
You can take pictures of that. Yeah. And interesting. If you take a picture of the back of the back of the book should have the ISBN on it. You can get it on your local bookseller down in the right above the barcode should be the ISBN. Some of these they are out of print. But they're Dover made so many books. I think the last time I looked, I found upwards of 27 different books. Those two are my favorite. I think those two are great books that across. And we actually had that Chinese lattice design book, the Daniel Shi guide.
Yeah.
We had that one here in our library. I don't see it.
Okay, I'll just come over and do a quick intro. I'll be good. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Casey Clay Guild's workshop with Matt Moore on, I hope I'm in screen. Let's get close.
Yeah.
On 3D printed rollers. He's going to be walking us through how he designs, uses, prints, all of that, his own 3D textured roller stamps, along with like name stamps and other stamps for pottery. So I'll let Matt, this is one of his sets, and he printed the box also.
Yep.
But I'll let you take it away.
Thanks. I'm Matt Moore. I have been throwing here for a few years, and I decided to make these a while ago. I don't remember what it was that I saw, but I saw somebody that had some work like this across the bottom of their pots, and I really liked the look of it. On this mug, you get a decent idea of what that might look like, and hopefully that's focusing. But I use these usually across the bottom of my pots, just below the glaze, to add just a bit of visual interest. I've got it here on this larger bowl. This probably won't show up very well, but and then I do a bunch of flat stamps that I use to mark up the bottom of my bowls, so my name, and so on and so forth. I'll let those get shown. The stamps themselves are pretty straightforward, but when and why to use them, they can be utility stamps. So, like I said, with names, dates. Sometimes buying a date stamp every year just gets to be a lot of money and kind of like an annoying expense. So if you can figure out how to make your own date stamps, that can be really helpful. If you're looking for a very specific thing, like I want to say that my work is made in Waldo, handmade in Waldo, Missouri. That's not something that you're going to be able to get online. You could probably order it custom, but at that point, you might as well do it yourself. And then where to use them? Really anywhere on the pots. I've thought more and more about using, I don't have any examples here, but trays, like hand-built slab trays, doing them along the edges. A really great potter that's out there that uses stamps in a really cool way, like Sarah Hiker. I don't know if you've seen that, but she's really great. She does a lot of really cool slab-built work. And that was a huge inspiration for kind of going down this path. My work is not anything as cool as hers, but where to get ideas for making stamps would be where I would start. And I was showing these a little bit earlier for people here. I found these books online. They're from Dover Publications, and they are free. Royalty-free work that you can use on your work, and they're really great sources of inspiration. So if I find a page that has just a bunch of examples, let's see, find what I've marked. So this page has a number of examples on there. So you could take something from one of these, use it in your work, maybe even turn it into a tar paper template, and impress it, or you could use it to create like a border stamp, like what we're talking about here. Here's another great example. That might be something that we grab today and turn into a stamp if we have some time. They make a whole series of books. I'll take this sticky note off. So there's Mexico, there's geometrics and Victorian styles, a whole bunch of different options for you to dig into. These all have just so many really great ideas. Another place would be media. If you see patterns on media, trim work, and you go to the hardware store, just making that depth map of that trim work could be a really cool way to spice up your work a little bit. And then, of course, like I said before, utility, that comes back down to like names. This one is made in the USA, because people are always wondering about that now. It's like, was it made here? Was it made in China? Year stamps. And then
maybe you'll do this later, but would you put those up close to show them how their resin is different looking than the up to this?
So those the flat or rocker, I call them stamps. Those are resin tipped to get a lot of the fine detail that you need. And they're really hard to see because they're clear.
Well, we tried.
And then they have
Instagram can see it.
That's good. And then they have just plastic printed handles. The plastic printed handles hold up a lot better than the resin. And if the resin end pops, like cracks or something, I can just pop them off and stick it on the same handle. Let's see if we can. I'll stick this into a slab that I have here. I don't know if it's quite right, but no, it's a little soft. And that was something else maybe to talk about is when to use these in your process. I have found that the best time to use them is when your clay is leather hard.
Down. Back. Perfect.
Yeah, when your clay is just leather hard, it's no longer tacky. It's like smooth to your touch. Like a hard leather hard, that is perfect. It comes out nice and crisp. That's where most of like this work is at when I apply the stamps. Considerations on designs. You have to experiment on your own a little bit for depth. I found that about 1 millimeter depth works really well. You can go deeper or shallower. And then reusability. I don't like printing these stamps. The handles take up a ton of material. So finding a way to get this material cheaper and only use that expensive resin on the working piece can be a great way to save a little bit of money. I've used pieces of like dowel on here as well. And the great thing is, since you're designing it yourself, you can make that stamp fit whatever handle that you find. Chopsticks, something that's reusable. Maybe next time you order takeout, use that chopstick, use a pair of calipers, measure the end, and then you can, epoxy that stamp onto the end of the chopstick. Ways to make stamps. So this is kind of getting more into where we are, what we're here for. Ways to make stamps. There's, of course, handmade stamps. I think we see a lot of that online. There's people that will take tiny little pieces of clay and carve them and oops. I'll have to start a new meeting. Let me just stop it now then. Cool. There's lots of people online that will make stamps themselves with their hands. I think that's really great. If I had more patience, I would probably do that a bit more. That's why I am doing a lot of 3D printing. It leans into my strengths that I have over years. There's, I think, 3 great ways to 3D print stamps. The first is FDM printing, which is not something that we have here. That is that like traditional Ender 3 bamboo lab where it has a spool of plastic filament, and it's extruding that plastic onto a build plate and building up that. So the handles of these stamps is made on an FDM printer. So you'll get those kind of like signature FDM layer lines. The downside of printing stamps on that style of printer is that the resolution that you're going to get of those details is going to be a lot lower, relatively speaking, in comparison to a resin print. You're going to end up running out of resolution very quickly. I have seen a lot of people that are very successful doing it that way, but it kind of limits what you're able to do. And since I like these text-based stamps, I end up leaning towards resin, which the proper industry name for resin is going to be MSLA or SLA, which is selective layer adhesion or selective laser adhesion or masked selective stereolithography. These printers, which we have one here, and I can walk over there through the power of movie magic. This is a MSLA printer. This is my Photon Mono 6K. The primary thing to look at when looking at a resin printer for this application is your XY resolution. I'll show you where to find that on the computer on like the product page as well, but that's really what you're going to look for. And whatever that XY resolution is, I would say multiply it by about 4 to figure out how small your smallest detail would be. So that resolution is going to be the smallest pixel, is going to be the size of the actual pixel on the screen, and you know how fine the UV is. These printers do use UV light, and UV light is very damaging. So most of them will have interlocks. You can't use them unless this cover is on, and this is there to protect your eyes. But this is completely empty and not even turned on. These will have a vat that you fill with resin. My advice to you is fill it when you want to use it, and then as soon as you're done, put it all back in the bottle and clean it out. And also, always buy water washable resin. The resolution difference between alcohol washable resin and water washable resin isn't significant enough to matter to any of us. And the price difference is so small, there's no reason to use anything but water washable. And it's so much better for you. You're not having to deal with isopropyl alcohol to clean everything. You can just take your prints right off the print bed. Take this print bed to the sink, just distilled water, and rinse it off really well. Use a paintbrush and get in there and get all the details. And that's going to be so much easier than having to put on a whole bunch of protective gear. You should still wear gloves. The resin is still dangerous. Don't let the water washable part reduce that danger. So do wear gloves, but it just makes it a much more pleasant process. Underneath the vat, which is clear on the bottom, there's a sheet of very, very thin plastic that lets the UV light shine through, which is what we're kind of using. So if you're familiar with how FDM how FDM printing works, where there's a layer and the printer will print out the layer, and then it will move the print head up a little bit and print on top of that layer. We're doing the same thing here, but at a much, much, much smaller scale. So this print bed actually comes down into the vat and creates a gap between the print bed and the screen. And there's a digital, black and white LCD panel here that creates a mask. And that mask is what that layer looks like. And underneath is a big UV projector light that shines up, and that mask blocks all of the UV light except for what's unmasked, and that hardens the resin that is exposed. And then that light will turn off, that print bed raises up, lets more resin flow in, comes back down to our layer height and exposes it again, and then it keeps going. So the nice thing about this is the actual print time for each layer doesn't change dependent on how much stuff is on the print bed. With an FDM printer, that print time grows really quickly as your work gets bigger, because that print head has to keep moving and print. You can only move so quickly. On an MSLA printer, it's the same speed no matter what. So these stamps that we're going to look at today take about 20 minutes to print. So pretty quick turnaround. I'm going to put this back on here, but I'll kind of show you a better visual than just looking at a printer. And hopefully we can see the screen. But let me pull up an example file and we can look at what those layers look like. And then I'll kind of get on to the actual how to do the thing. So I'm going to pull up find a file that I threw on my desktop.
I don't think we're sharing screens anymore. Oh, okay. So we're gonna skip that.
I'm just gonna show this.
Cool.
Yeah, I think.
No worries at all.
I'm gonna throw this on here. I'm gonna scale this up just to make it a little bit easier. Can you see okay? Is it like showing up okay? Okay. So I'm gonna, this software is called Chi2Box. It's gonna be the most common software you'll find with resin printers. Like,
Will you repeat what it's called?
Chi2Box. That's how I pronounce it. I'm sure it's wrong.
Are you able to angle that down just a little? There's a little glare. Perfect. Thank you.
This is going to be the most common slicing software you'll find with a resin printer. There are better options out there. This one's free. What this will actually do is cut the object that you're looking to print into those layers that your printer is going to use. On this, those layers themselves are actually only 0.05 millimeters high. So really, really, really small. And what that ends up looking like is this. So that first layer that you're going to get this is what that screen is going to do. It's going to go completely black everywhere but where where we want our print to be. And then as we work up, it's going to change how that's exposed. You can see we're starting to get some of those little details on the side, and it's going to keep moving those up and up and up as we work through this until we finally get all the way back up to the top, and it'll finish off. This one that I scaled up a whole bunch is like 3 or 4 hours. If I grab just the standard size that I normally do, it's 45 minutes. So you can get a bunch of these made really quickly. All right, let me check my notes and see where we are. How are we doing on time, Deborah?
You've only gone like half an hour.
Okay, cool. That gives us plenty of time. The last thing I wanted to talk about before we get into like the actual design software side is software itself and considerations for software. This software that I'm showing on this screen is a software called Fusion 360. Fusion 360 is free for anybody to use if you're not using the software to make more than $1,000 a year. So if you're a hobbyist and just kind of like playing around with it, it's totally free. If you're using it to make more than $1,000 a year, you have to pay for the license, and it's like $65 a month. So there's a pretty big jump, but they do expect that if you're making a bunch of money with it, that you can pay for it. Some other options would be like Blender, which is a great like mesh-based free option. But Blender does kind of jump into a different category where Fusion 360 is an engineering parametric modeling software, so very dimension-driven. Blender is going to be more feel and like a mesh editor where you're pushing and pulling, using Boolean operations to cut. You're not going to be able to, from my experience with it, I can't get this out of Blender. I'm sure somebody could, but I can't. There are a lot of other ones that you can try. A fun one to try would be like Tinkercad, which is totally free Autodesk software that is online. It's Tinker and then CAD. that is a very simple software that you can use to make stamps. I think it allows you to import SVGs, um, which is a great way to get stamps like into 3D modeling software. And I just realized I skipped over something, which is online services as an option for printing. Um, I was talking a little bit earlier on how tedious it is to use a resin printer, and I don't recommend it for most people. If I'm being like 110% honest, it's a lot of work. It's not a lot of fun. The results are great. I think the results, like for me, they make up for the difficulty in using it, but it is a really steep learning curve, and you will get messy. And I don't love it. Like my fingers are sticky from touching that. I probably should have put on gloves to even touch that stuff. Um, so yeah, some options. One option at least online is a service called Shapeways. They are really great, and they have printers that I or you are probably never going to be able to afford. Um, that'll get much better results, and they will do all of the post processing for you. I went on yesterday and I took that same part that we were just looking at. Let me throw it back in here real quick. Let's see, it's on my desktop. So we're going to throw it back in there. With the math that this did, this calculates that the price of the resin to print this one part on that printer is 6 cents, which doesn't sound like a whole lot. If I was to order this from Shapeways, let's see, I'm waiting to see if it'll edit my card. I think it was 8 cents for them to print it. Yeah, in nylon, or sorry, 80. No, I lied. 83 cents. But if you're not making a ton of them, 83 cents versus 6 cents, I don't know. We're really cutting back that much. You know, if I've got maybe 12 to 20 of these stamps. Yeah, so they're pretty small. So this is. Let's see if I can get close. How does that look on the Instagram?
On Instagram, it looks great.
Okay, and then
This camera's having. Oh, that's good actually.
so that is what that actually looks like. It's pretty small. So if you were to order these from Shapeways, and it's not like I have like a deal with them or anything.
Hey, and since you just did that, will you show the texture on that mug too, just
Yeah.
to kind of show what that does
So
exactly?
that stamp will do a texture kind of like that. How's that look on the ground?
It looks good on Instagram.
There it is.
Angle, yeah, just kind of, yeah, down, yeah, perfect. And then, yeah, go to the non-glazed part too. Yeah, cool.
Okay. So yeah, if you wanted to order from Shapeways, I would honestly, for the first few prints, probably recommend it. The way that they're going to get you on Shapeways is in shipping. The
That's how they
prints,
get you.
the prints are like 80 cents, so order a bunch of them. But the shipping is like $25. So think of it as like it's $25 to get the thing, and then have a bunch on top. But they have so many different options and materials and machines that you can use. You could get it in nylon. You can get it in brass. There's like a ton of different options that they have, and they've done people's wedding rings. They do parts for medical companies for prototyping. Of course, if you wanted to get it in gold, it's $2,600. But if you wanted to get it in brass, you could get it as little as $45 for one of those, which could be a cool way to get some of these if you want like a really heavy duty stamp that you can use forever. Because a lot of these, they will eventually deteriorate and you're going to have to make more. Okay. Do you have any questions? Is there any other questions on like that? And then I'll get into like actually designing. Do you have anything? No? Okay, cool. Let me close some of these up. Let's look at what it takes I'm going to specifically talk about Fusion 360 today because that is the software that I am most proficient in. Do you want me to join like a Zoom call to see if that one looks any better, or does this look
Honestly,
pretty
it's
good?
pretty good
Okay.
once yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna talk about flat stamps, and then rocker stamps, and then finally roller stamps. The first two don't take very long, thankfully. They're very straightforward. Um, Flat stamps in Fusion are very simple. It's probably honestly a great way to get started if you just download the software onto your computer. I'll make one real quick, actually, since we're here. I'm going to start with a sketch. So everything in Fusion is based on sketches and then functions attached to the shapes that you make in the sketch. So I'm going to grab, let's do some text. Drag that out. I'm going to do KC Play Guild. Oops. That's really good there. KC Play GUI LT. I'm going to bring the size down to maybe like 2 millimeters. I'm going to call that good. You can change the font as much as you want. And then I'm going to just draw a quick rectangle around the whole thing.
Whoops.
Sorry,
Instagram.
So that's all I'm going to do there. I might grab this and give us a little bit more of a border around all of this text. And you can get in there with dimensions and like really get it down fine. But I'm going to call that good. I'm going to take that big rectangle that we did and I'm going to push this back to give us something, a base plate to work on. Call that 2 millimeters. That text is going to go away, but I'm going to go get it back from my sketches panel. And then I'm going to use the emboss. Let's see, it's hard when I'm looking at such a steep angle. I'm going to use the emboss tool and emboss it on this face, and then we're only going to do maybe one, let's call it 0.5 millimeters. So there we go. I'm going to turn that sketch back off, and that is the most basic flat text stamp that you can get with no extra borders. If we wanted to add a border, it would be ridiculously easy. Like, let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to do a border. I'm going to offset this. We're going to add a 0.5 offset. I'm going to finish that sketch, and I'm going to add this. We're going to go 2 sides.
What is the offset?
So the offset was just to create the additional outline. I'm going to hide this again. So there we go. So now, with just one quick little action, we have a little border around that whole stamp, which looks pretty similar to like this name stamp that we've done in the past. The last thing that I always forget to do until right now is that this is wrong. And that's not going to be readable when I stamp it, because if we flip that around, it's going to read black kiss, So I'm going to go back into my sketch real quick. There's a nifty little tool in the text function of Fusion, and I'm just going to flip that horizontally and call it done, and then turn that sketch back off, and we fix the problem. That can also be fixed in the slicing software, that Chitu box that we looked at earlier. There's a way to just flip models and mirror them across themselves. So if you forget to do it here and you export it and get it in there and you're like ready to print and you're like, oh crap, I gotta go back into Fusion and mess this whole thing up, don't worry, you can do it in there as well. Flat stamps are super simple. Looking at rocker stamps is the next thing. These are great when you start to get longer text, like here. This was a Bible verse that's pretty long. I've also used this same length, I think, for Made in the USA. So longer stamps, when you try to press them into the clay, a lot of times they will, the middle of the stamp won't go in all the way. for some reason. I'm sure that there's a reason for that. So if you roll the stamp on the clay like so, you're actually only having a smaller contact point throughout that whole time that you're rolling it on, and you can get a more even application. These use, this was the thing that I think made this all work for me. Roller and rocker stamps use the sheet metal function of Fusion, which to me at the time sounded wild. It was like sheet metal. That's a tab that I've always seen in Fusion. I had no idea what to do with it, but we're gonna do that today. I'm gonna move one of these around, get this out of the way, so we can have our origin back. What we're gonna do. All right, so I'm gonna make a new sketch again. I know there's some stuff in the way, but let me just hide some of these real quick. Sorry. Alright, so I'm going to make a circle. We're going to call this, this is going to be the actual diameter of that curve. So the larger the circle you make, the smoother, or the less, what's the word? The less noticeable, that curve is going to be. If you make it a lot larger, it's going to be pretty not very noticeable, and it's going to be a little bit easier to rock. If you do a lot smaller, you'll kind of have some issues where it starts to get really intense rocking that thing over. It might, so there's a sweet spot that you can find. We're going to do like 20 millimeters today as just a starting point. I think if I go back and find one of these other ones I've done, I'm sure that there's a better. Let's see if I find. That's not a good example. I'm sure that there's a good answer, but I'm going to go ahead and add a line on this, just straight up. We're going to change this into a construction line. Construction lines in Fusion aren't. They don't apply to shapes. So if I add a line to this, it's going to subdivide that shape. If I add a construction line, it's just there to help me figure out what I'm doing. I'm going to add a second line. We're just going to kind of guesstimate here. So I'm just going to shoot this out right about there. That looks good to me. And we're going to switch that also over to a construction line. And the last thing I'm going to do, well, second to last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim the circle so we just have this arc. I'm going to add a little tail to this guy, just like that. And that is it for my sketch. Doesn't look like much of a stamp, but that's okay. We're going to go into the sheet metal tool, and we're actually going to use the create flange feature. I'm going to select this profile that I have, and I'm going to stretch this out to 5 millimeters. And that gives us this. Hopefully you're starting to see it. There's a stamp in there somewhere. And I'm going to use the niftiest of all things, which is modify, unfold. I'm going to grab a stationary plane right here. It's going to go ahead and see what that looks like. It's probably bent. I'm going to unfold it. So now, whatever I do on this face, when I refold it, is going to flex to that face. So, and that is really important for when you go to apply the stamp to clay. If it's actually conforming to that face, it's going to look correct when you roll it onto clay. If you were to just take a curved face and project text onto that curved face at a tangent, like on a tangential plane, it wouldn't look right. It would look weird. It would look stretched at the beginning. It would look perfect in the middle, and then it would look stretched at the end. But by doing this, we can get something that looks pretty nice. So I've done that. I'm going to do. Let's see, where is it? I'm going to do create sketch again. So as you're learning, lots of sketches that we're going to do here. I am going to do a little. I'm going to use offset again. We're going to do a -1. Let's call it 0.5 millimeter offset. We're going to get a little border happening here. And then I'm just going to do some circles, maybe some bubbles, like that. And I'm going to add a little bit of text. Maybe somebody's name is Bubbles. And I'm going to give them a B for their initial. Make that just a bit bigger. There we go, 3.5. Put that over a little bit, and then you give them a few more of these little spots. Okay. Finish that. I'm going to go back to our solid mode, and I'm going to extrude, select all of our bubbles. I'll have to come back and grab that B, put it back in DOS tool that we used earlier. I'm going to bring this out 0.5. I'm going to turn that sketch back on. It's always frustrating that it hides it, but that's such is how it goes. I'll find a DOS, select our text, select our face, 0.5 again, and hide that. So you can see now we have our Bubbles name stamp for somebody whose nickname is Bubbles. And the last thing to do is we're going to go back to sheet metal, and we're going to hit this refold button. This is my favorite part of the whole process. We're going to hit refold, and it curves everything there back down to that original 20 millimeter circle.
What is that little tab for?
So that tab is there for the sheet metal function. The sheet metal function expects that there is some sort of stationary thing that's being held in a machine, and then everything is being bent around it. So what we're going to do to finish up our stamp is we're just going to get rid of it. Now we don't have a tab. And then I'm going to create a sketch on the side here. I'm going to run a line from that edge to that edge. And that's about it. I'm going to grab my extrude tool. I'm going to flip this around, and we're going to just going to extrude that over. And now I have a nice perpendicular face to attach a handle to. And you can send that off and give that to your friend Bubbles so that they can stamp their flag as much as they want. And that backside there would work great for a handle, kind of like this. So making a handle and then gluing that stamp on there.
Could you go so far as to make the back so that you can slide it onto one of your handles?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like remember how earlier I was talking about like let's do a chopstick thing, right? Like so, let's say that I want to do this where I can attach it to a chopstick. So I'm gonna start with that. I'm gonna make I pulled that face out a little bit. I'm gonna eyeball the center because I'm kind of lazy. We're gonna call it like 3 millimeters. We're gonna call it like 10. Yeah, that looks maybe 8. That looks good. Doesn't actually have to fit, but we're gonna pretend that that fits. I'm gonna use our solid, and then where is? It's hard for me to see at such a steep angle.
Oh, sorry.
Grab. There we go. So we're going to add a loft to get that to cut over. I'm going to create a new sketch there. And then I'm going to do in the center of our circle, about like that. That looks good. And then I'm going to extrude this out. So now, if you had maybe a dowel or a chopstick or something, you could slide that dowel in there and epoxy it in place. And you would have your stamp right there on top. So, and you can do the same thing with like slotting that stamp onto here. It's just making an alcove for that. Any questions on that? Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can get it to fit on there. I like using the loft tool. Loft basically fits one shape to another automatically, and you can doing a square to a circle is probably one of the easier ones. You can also dress these up a little bit. Like let's say that we wanted the outside edge here to be rounded over. I can use our fillet tool and just kind of knock. Oh, doesn't want to do that. Never mind. All right, forget I said that. There's a way you can do it. It doesn't want to do that today, but you can definitely get a lot fancier with this. This is a very basic one. You can take somebody's signature, take a photo of it, put it into a software like either Illustrator or a free option would be Figma. Trace that using the pen tool, export it as an SVG, and then drop it in here into Fusion, and you can extrude that SVG as like your signature and turn your signature into a stamp. That's a pretty easy way to get a stamp, like a signature stamp. It takes a little bit of time, but you can definitely do it. So, and then I think the last thing I'll do is talk a little bit on rollers. We'll look at this one. I don't think we have quite enough-ish time, but not
You're good
quite.
on time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these rollers use an almost identical method to making the rocker stamp. We're going to reuse that sheet metal tool, that trick that we got from sheet metal, but with a bit of math behind it to figure out how that's going to work. I'm going to show this as an example. A neat thing about Fusion is that at the bottom, it actually has a timeline that shows all of the actions that are taken. So I can actually just step back in time and show where we started. So starting at absolutely nothing. And then you can see I made a big old wraparound circle here because this stamp is only repeated twice. There's only 2 instances of the pattern on the whole roller. So I made this big old half circle. There we go. I unfolded it, so I got a nice big flat sheet of work surface. And then, let's see, I drew on it, added those edges, and then chamfered them.
You did what?
I added the edges on that border. So this border here.
And then you said you chamfered them?
Yeah, I chamfered the edges on that border. So adding a slight chamfer, which is cutting down the sides just a little bit.
So it's like an angle?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're actually, if you look at these from like a side, you can see that they're not perfectly straight.
Mm-hmm. To let it cut in better.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as you press in, that actually pushes the clay a little bit further apart. You can do them straight. I've done tons straight. This can help at the scale of these stamps. I don't know if it matters.
Okay.
Like, I don't actually know if it helps at all.
You did it.
But I did it anyways. So that's how you get a stamp that kind of looks like that. And then we wrap it up. We'll wrap that back together so you can see now it's all nice and wrapped halfway around. I'm going to move my head over here. It's also a really small touch target. So I remove that little stub. I mirror this around. I make basically a copy of it. So now there's 2 of them. I'm going to add a sketch, it looks like, and then I add a fill to the whole thing to make it solid. There's a combine, another sketch. I cut everything out in the middle, remove some of that waste so that these get a little bit, they don't use quite as much material and they drain a little bit better. I don't know if it really matters. I like the look of it. I had a hole in the middle because sorry, I put it right in there. The holder that I uses a small screw through that middle hole. So that is what that's there for. And then the last thing is adding a slight little, let's say it again, chamfer and a label on it. That chamfer along the center hole helps when you're putting that screw through. It helps self-locate. If it was just straight, you'd have to get it like perfect every time. But adding just a little bit of a round over helps you guide it in. without having to like fidget with it too much.
Are you able to show us how you add the chamfer?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can do that. So if it is. Trying to decide how I want to go about this. So right here, before we have it, under the Modify menu, there is the chamfer tool. And chamfer tool is pretty neat. I'm going to select this inner this circle here, this edge. When I'm doing like these edges for that inner hole, I'm going to use the equal distance, which basically puts a 45-degree chamfer on whatever edge I'm working on. And then I'm just going to grab my handle and push it until I think it looks good. 0.5 looks good. The other way you can do it is I like to use distance and angle as a mode for chamfering. Distance and angle does what it says. So one direction is the distance that it's going to cut in, and the angle is the angle of that cutter that you're going to use. So you can see here we're pushing in 0.5, but if I grab my angle tool, I can make it a little bit shallower, all the way down to 15, or I can make it 0, but bring it down to maybe like 30 degrees if I don't want it to look quite as deep, or I could really bring it down to like 60 degrees and make it a really, really deep chamfer. But generally 45 is nice for these like self-locating parts. So any questions there? I'm going to walk through how to set up one of these files real quick, and then hopefully I'll kind of work through that. So maybe file, new design. Starting with the new design, we're not actually doing designing yet. Under modify, I'm going to go down to change parameters. And I might have to jump back and forth between another file to show how to do this. But change parameter, when you're working in Fusion, you're using a lot of dimensions. And parameters essentially act as reference numbers that you change in the parameter menu rather than having to go and find every single instance. So I can give a named parameter. So we're going to say, stamp underscore diameter. So stamp diameter. I just realized, hold on one second. I'm going to go ahead and change something. It always defaults to inches. I don't want it to. All right, so back in the modify menu. Stamp diam. This one's going to be 10 millimeters. The most important one that we're going to need, though, there's two really important ones, is going to be number around. This is a unitless number, and we're going to do something that repeats 4 times. So that NR underscore around parameter, this one, is the number of times that your pattern is going to show up around that cylinder. If you're doing like a really narrow pattern, you can do it a bunch, up to as much as you want. If you're doing a really, really wide pattern, like we just saw in that other one, just doing it twice. And then the one that's actually going to require some math is arc angle. So arc, it's not really it's not special math. We're going to do degrees, and the expression that we're going to do is 360 divided by number around times 1 degree. So you can see that it's gone ahead and done that math for me. 360, which is the number of degrees in a circle, divided by the number around times 1 is 90. So there's 90 degrees if you divide 360 by 4. That's really the most important ones in here. You could get a lot more detailed with your parameters like feature depth, height of the stamp. If you do that, there's a lot of ways where you can use parameters to scale or adjust your stamp depending later once you've already done the design. So if you wanted it to repeat more, depending on how you design it, if you design it really well, if you want it to repeat more, it'll actually shrink that design down to repeat more times versus or stretch it out to repeat less times. Or if you want to increase the diameter of the stamp, you can do that. There's a number of ways, and there's some extra math that you could do in here if you wanted to base it on like how wide that design is. But we're going to stick with those. When I do a new sketch, we're going to do our circle here, and I'm going to call this diam. So as you can see, when I'm doing my when I do my dimension, instead of typing in a number and 10, I can actually just type in stamp, and it autofills for that parameter that I was just talking about. I'm going to grab my line. We're going to see that exact same. We'll do 2 lines real quick. That exact same procedure that we did earlier on that rocker, where I did a circle with 2 construction lines. But this time we're going to grab the dimension tool, which is where is it? There it is. It's under create. Sketch dimension. I always just hit D on the keyboard. D is dimension fusion. I grab this guy and this guy. I'm going to call that rectangle. And ta-da! It does it for us. It sets it at 90. Now here's the cool thing about this. If I go and I do change parameters, and I decide that actually this looks like a pretty narrow design, I'm going to do this maybe 5 times around or 6 times. It automatically adjusts here in the sketch down to 60 degrees. If I wanted to do this 5 times, I can definitely do that, and it'll do all the math for me at 72 degrees. So it does all of the thinking for you. If you want to change it later, you don't have to go back and do anything. And I'll show in a second. I'm going to trim this real quick, get rid of the rest of the circle, and then add that little sprue that I've talked about before. That gives us something to work with. I'm going to do my sheet metal and create a flange. 5 millimeters tall. This is probably pretty small. I don't have a ruler with me today. I usually do. I have like calipers and rulers sitting on my desk, so I can reference as I go. And like I said earlier, remember I was talking about you can change the parameter at any time. I can go into solid, modify, change parameter. You know, I think this might be too small. So I'm just gonna change that to 20. And it does the whole thing for you. Or like, I think that, see now that looks way too long for the style I want. So I'm gonna cut this down, or I'm gonna increase the number of repetitions up to, let's say, 8 times. And I think that looks a little bit better. So I didn't have to go in and actually do anything other than open up this menu and change the numbers that are there, because the design is referencing my table here. I'm going to unfold this. So I'm going to select my stationary spot, which is right here. Select my bend, make it flat. I'm going to create my new sketch right here. So the nice thing is this edge and this edge are going to, those are going to be that repeating edge that we see throughout the design. So they will meet. You can do a bunch of construction lines here. I'm going to grab this book that I have, Chinese Lattice Designs book. There's, I'm going to look through here real quick, and maybe I might pick that one. What? Yeah, it's okay. I'm looking for one that doesn't. That's this one. That's this one. Can't do that one. Let's see. I want to find something that's not going to take like 3 hours to do. That looks interesting. Let's try doing that. Alright, so like I said, the edges are going to meet on either end.
Hey Matt, can you show the design again?
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to be the best option. the design that I'm looking at doing out of this book is this this bottom one here. If I was at home, I would take the book over to my printer. I would scan this and make a scan of this page so I could sketch on it. What I'm thinking here, so when we're looking at this, right, we want to think this is only a section of this design, right? How do we make this repeat infinitely? Because that's what we're trying to get to. So I'm thinking, looking at it here, all that I really need to do is probably cut this down the middle. There's some kind of weirdness happening here. So cut that down the middle there because I want to have a nice straight edge to work with. And then probably cut either here or here. I'm trying to think about it. Maybe I'll look for a different one. Let me just flip through here again. Because there's probably some simpler ones in here that I can do that are going to take less brain power while I'm talking about it.
Just do repeating lines or something.
Yeah, I think I'll do that. Alright. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a line that cuts down through the center. I'm going to make this a construction line. I'm just going to work kind of quickly through this while we're talking about it. I'm going to do a 0.25 off one side. I think that looks about right. I'm going to do offset again. I'm going to make a divide, yeah, like I said, a dividing line down the middle. I am going to do a border along the whole thing. I think the border is a really great tool to do every time that you're working with these stamps, because a quick tip is that if you use your needle tool on the wheel, so you put the pot on the wheel, you get it spinning, use your needle tool, scribe a line, that's going to give you a really nice straight, like perfect circle. Turn the wheel off, put your roller on there and hand crank. Put your roller on there and hand turn the wheel while you're pressing it on there. Don't try and do this with the wheel going. It's not going to match up on the end. And it is amazing how often the pattern almost looks like it perfectly matches up. So that can be it can be pretty neat when that happens. I'm going to keep working through this stuff. We're going to do 0.5 again. Make it negative so it goes inside. I'm going to trim some stuff up here. Trim. Fusion loves to throw errors at you, and I found the best way to handle them is just to not notice them. So just keep working through that. I think I just noticed that this is not going to work the way that I want it to. Make it back up a bit. Going to back up just a touch. This line is the wrong spot. And come down here right to the middle, and then have it come back up. And do everything again. Select those retraction lines. Select offset 0.5, negative 0.6. Select this line down here. Correct. And then same thing. Quarter that way, negative quarter the other way. I'm going to trim out some stuff. Trim. That. Going up here, do the same thing, get rid of a bunch of these lines. And this might not turn out perfectly, like you can see, that edge isn't going to line up just right. You know, that'll bug me, it might bug you, and I'm sorry if it does. We're going to get as close as we can right And these construction lines might look like they've gone solid. They haven't. There's actually these ridiculously far away dimensions that just make them look solid for some reason. So if I pull these back in, you can see that they actually are just in the wrong spot. When I grab those, I don't know why it doesn't want them. That's fusion. Alright, so that is going to be a repeating pattern the whole way around. I'm going to add some pizzazz to this though, so I'm going to grab my circle tool. It does automatically find the middle for you. There's a triangle when it is in the middle. I'm going to make 1 mil circle there. Get rid of that. Then I'm going to do, let's see, maybe a little bit. Find out. Oops. There. Float down like that. Middle. That. About like that. Put one of those there, and then I'll do a second one. I'm gonna do a little construction plan real quick, just so that I get this right. I'm gonna do 135, so it's 45 degrees out. Construct it. Go back, grab my ellipse tool. I think the middle looks to be about there. Make it about that big, about like that. And then I'm going to use the mirror tool, grab that, grab my mirror line, grab my object selected, and make a line like this. It's sneaky. Go. Mirror, select, mirror line, select, done. Get rid of that line. So there is a little, hopefully start to imagine what's happening here. There's a little kind of sun happening. I'm going to come down and do the exact same thing down here with my circle tool. I'm going to do one more. There. This should actually, ooh, there we go. Copy this guy. Just move him all the way over here. Hopefully it'll line up. The business is pretty close. So, and then why is because it tapers this joining angle, and then your pattern doesn't match up. So I don't typically do it, and even then, it's really not at the scale that these stamps are working at. I don't think I've ever noticed it really needing to be like a perfect thing. 5 again, push that out. So there we go. There's our kind of like flowery, repeating stamp. I think that's gonna look right when we're all done. I'm gonna go back into oops, back file.
You lost your circle.
Sorry?
You lost your circle.
I did lose my circle. Let's go edit. Grab it. No circle. Delete the whole thing. No, I didn't. It's the sketch is through. So I'm just gonna try again here. See if I can get it to grab everything. It could be doing something weird. I just don't see it. I think it's got everything that time. Yeah. Look at those numbers. Sometimes Fusion does weird things. It might be that I need to go in and edit. Let's edit this image. Let's just trim out something. Maybe that'll help. I think that looks. There we go. Got it to work that time, so just took trimming that. I'm going to do my sheet metal tool. I am going to use refold. So there we go, we bent that. extrude this, get rid of it. And then remember how at the very beginning we started our circle at the origin? It's going to come in handy here in just a second. Because remember how every time that you do like a mirror or like a pattern, you have to have some point that has to move around. That origin is going to be really helpful. Because I'm going to do create in the pattern, circular pattern. I'm going to grab my body, which is this one. I'm going to come down here and find an axis, which is this nice green axis. We're going to do number around. And there you go. There is a little repeating pattern, little sunrises or something like that the whole way around.
That's a nice pattern.
And it took you like 20 minutes, that's it.
Yeah, it doesn't take too long. You can do it. It's actually, I should have kept looking at the book. It's this one out of the book. So I didn't pull it completely out of my butt. So there's a bunch on this page. I grabbed that one because it looked, I could imagine how to cut it up to get it to work. At this point, all that I would do is add another sketch to fill in the middle. So I'm going to grab that and come out to diameter. I'm going to type in stamp diameter, which is that big. Extrude that out. Use the, instead of doing a distance, there's a neat feature in Fusion. You can do to object, and you can select a face. So it's going to extrude to a certain face till it matches up. So I don't actually have to remember that it's 5 millimeters, that's how wide the stamp is. I can just do that. I'm going to select everything and combine the whole thing. It doesn't look like oh, it's already all combined. How neat
So
is
those
that?
lines between the sections, though, those are just as that's
You
it will
won't
be
see it.
printed. It
Yeah,
won't.
they
Okay.
don't get printed.
Yeah.
You can see sometimes on like this one, that line there, like you don't see them.
No.
You'll never actually see
Okay.
those. The last thing to do here is add some sort of way to hold this thing. I'm going to do a hold in the middle. Grab that there. I'm going to say, I think if I remember correctly, the tips of my finger are about 8 millimeters in diameter. So I'm going to say 8 millimeters there. Extrude that straight through, just like that. And then I'm going to grab our chamfer tool and chamfer this bad boy. And this one I'm going to do as distance and angle. I'm going to make it pretty steep in there and a pretty shallow angle. I'm imagining this is a pretty large stamp. It's not the same size as as these rollers. So this would be something that you actually hold with your hand. So having that nice big chamfer gives a spot for your fingers to actually grip into that roller as you're rolling it along the clay. So I got a 15-degree chamfer there. I'm going to call it good. You can kind of get an idea. If I really wanted to, I'd add some text to this to label it for myself. I have found that as much as I like the idea of the text, it's really hard to see. It's on that stamp on the top, and you have to get the light just right to see it, but it is there. Like,
I can't.
so the final thing
I can't see.
in the workflow for Fusion, we're gonna go to make. I'm gonna select the body. I'm gonna double check everything. So we're gonna export this as an STL in unit type millimeters. Hit OK. I'm gonna put it on my desktop for right now. I'm gonna call this flower power. Save it. It's gonna take a second. Close Zoom. I'm gonna open up our slicing software, and at this point, all that would be left to do is I go onto my desktop, I find Flower Power. Oh, jeez, computer's frozen. Grab Flower Power, put it in there, and I have found the best way to print these in You can see it there. Like you can see even here, Deborah. Like you don't see those lines. They're gone.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
none of those
It
lines
was
are
just
gone.
a design thing.
Yeah, it's just it's part of this file. Like those lines exist for some reason in the file. I have found the best way to do these is to actually print them at just dead flat like this. The best thing to do though is to print them on some sort of raft like this. And when you're building up the supports for it, is to keep those supports away from the edge. Everywhere that the supports touch, you're going to leave a dimpled texture. You can see it on the bottom of that one. You can see it on that. There's like a dimpled texture. So keep it away from the pattern face where you want it to look really nice and pristine. One thing you could do is come in here and add. I could do like a, let's see, where is surface? It's like a push pull operation. I can't remember how to do it right now. You could grab this guy. Yeah. So like you could grab it and add a little bit of a little spot here for that guy to print and keep it away from the actual edge of the stamp by giving you a little bit of extra room on either side from the stamp, and that way when it's printing it can build up to that point. So if I was to go back and maybe if I was to improve this, let's get rid of that chamfer real quick. I would say go ahead and try to figure out. I'm gonna grab all of these spots and extrude them out just like, let's see, an extra, half mil. And then I'm gonna grab my chamfer tool and on that outside edge, I'm gonna remove that 0.5 millimeter that we just added. Equidistant 0.5 millimeter the whole way around. Just like that, so you get a little bit of a border from where the border starts to where the actual side of the stamp is. The only thing here is if you do that, you're not going to get a straight, nice cut on the edge of your stamp. You are going to get kind of like a chamfered look leading into the stamp, which maybe that's what you want. It's really up to the designer. I have had good luck though printing stamps just like this, where they're sitting flat, and you just start adding these little supports all around the bottom, keeping them away from your working edge. The resin prints will sag a little bit on the first ones because they're not going to be like 100% totally set. That's okay, but that distance of an overhang, it's not going to sag enough for it to be noticeable. Because all that's going to affect is the width of that one side's border, and these are 0.5 millimeter thick borders, and you're not going to see it. So definitely just go in. If you do the auto support in Chudobox, it's just going to cover this whole surface. In supports, it's going to look awful, and you're going to hate it. So it doesn't take long. Just click, and then you can copy paste it as much as you want. When you're actually printing them, though, let me reset all of this. When you're actually printing things, though, on a resin printer or an MSLA printer, I do recommend printing as much as you can on the build plate at any one time. If you're going to go to the trouble of setting the thing up and pouring resin in the vat and loading up the file and letting it run and stinking up your garage and then cleaning up the parts and cleaning up the vat and reclaiming all of that unused resin, you better get as many parts out of it as you can. And this, all right, watch it. So this takes 24 minutes. And if I was to uh, take this and copy it and paste it. As many times as I can, I select them all. I do a little auto layout in the center. Next side, there we go. So I get all of these. Oops. And the Control Z isn't working. Okay. Oh, let's try that one more time. Pretend like that didn't. Yeah. See, it was 24 minutes. I think that's the right one. That one. Please don't delete. Select all, auto layout along the X side. Don't select all. Auto layout. 24 minutes. If I do it again with however many that is, and it's still 24 minutes. So if you're going to print one, print all of them.
And you don't have to do repeats of the same one.
No,
you can do.
You can fit
okay.
you can do as many as you want in here.
Just
There
anything,
is
yeah.
there is 28 of these rollers on
Okay.
here. It would take the exact same amount of time, but you get 28 of them when
Yeah.
you're done versus just one.
Yeah.
And also, there's not a 100% success rate. Some of these will not make it.
Yeah.
They will get messed up. They'll get stuck to the bottom. Some of the details for some reason won't show up. There's all sorts of things that'll happen. It's inevitable. So it's great to have extras, and you don't feel bad when you have to toss out 3 when you have 28.
Yeah.
And then you can give them to your friends, or you can put a bunch of them in a bag. And when you go to the guild and you're using your stamp and you're working on your slab and you set it on the edge of the table, and then you turn and you knock it and it shatters into 3 pieces, you don't go, oh no, I have to set that whole thing up again and pour more resin in there, and it's going to be so sticky and smelly.
You really love this process.
I love this process. It is so rewarding. Instead, you can just go home and grab it.
Yeah.
But I do recommend, if you're going to get this, factor in the cost of a respirator, a subscription to rubber gloves, only buy water washable resin. But yeah, otherwise it's really great. So, any questions that people have, that you guys have? I think it's a great thing to do. It really opens up creativity. What I showed here is very simple. There's a lot of much more complicated patterns out there that you could absolutely execute using the same techniques. But
That
I think that's about it.
your thing?
Yeah, I think
Do you sell them?
I do not sell anything. If you really want, I will sell one to you, but it would have to be for the right price, and we'd have to discuss that. I do custom work. That's mostly what I've done recently, is customs for people's signature or
Yeah.
dates. I can definitely do stuff like that. This was a set that I had put together as an experiment to figure out whether or not it would be worth my time to sell this as a whole kit. And the price that I came out to was just not going to be. It wasn't, people just not going to buy it, So, anyways, I think that's all I've got.
all right. I've got
Deborah?
a couple housekeeping things. Thank you so much, Matt. That was
You're welcome.
fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah, it was really helpful. So I just want to go over a few things we have at the Guild. First, follow, subscribe, all those YouTube things. Also, just a reminder, we are in the process of fundraising for our new building. Goal date is September, October of 2026. So we are super excited about that. You can check out all that information online at our YouTube channel, at our website, kcclayguild.org. And there's private studios available. There's more studio space. It's 4 times the size of our current studio. We'll have more class offerings, more workshop offerings. We're just really excited about how much more we're going to be able to offer in that new space. So, in service of that, we have an event coming up, the KC Clay Guild Pod. Tickets are, I want to say it's $100 or $125, and you get your choice of, for the $100, you get a handmade pint from one of the artists here at the Guild, plus food drinks, all of that stuff over at KC Beer Company, which is right down the street from the Guild off of Warnall in Waldo. So that's going to be a really fun event. It is September 8th, 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Those tickets are available online through our website. So hope to see you all there. The second thing, and this is kind of big, I hope it fits. Lisa, is it fitting in the screen? Huey Lee, who has been an artist in resident here for the past 2 years, is doing his exit show. It's all through September. Sorry, I'm trying to see. So it opens, September 5th through 30th, but the actual opening reception will be in our gallery here at the Guild on September 12th at 6 p.m. So hope to see you there also. Come by, say hi to Huey. I believe he's still going to be around. He's just finished his term as an artist in residence. So anyway, I'm VC Kashyap. I am the workshops chair on the board here at the Guild. We'd love to see you here. Thanks for watching. And thank you again, Matt.
Of course.
All right.